How's it going, TEPPEN crew? You get a bonus video this week, and that is because there's something we have to talk about. And for those of you who have kept up with TEPPEN since the game came out in July, you know that most of the updates and information comes to us from the Japan development team. So most of the, updates and the posts and the news, all that stuff comes overnight. And we got some news about some balance changes that came down overnight. I'm going to walk you guys through that. Now, before you build up this idea in your mind of balance changes, this is going to be great, temper your expectations, because there's not a lot here in terms of changes, but there is a lot to discuss and kind of explain their thought process behind it, and then I'll kind of give my overall thoughts. People are going to be talking about this all day. The TEPPEN Discord blowing up. It's everywhere on Twitter, at least everywhere that I look on Twitter. So let's dive into this. There was a post that was posted to the website, and you have to dig a little bit for it because it's underneath some posts that are not as new, but I'm going to include a link in the description so you can see this. But just so you guys know, here's how that post starts out. It says the following balance adjustments will be made in the version 2.1 update. We got 2.0 not too long ago. It wasn't a big update. It was mostly bug fixes. So this will be 2.1. And then there's a note from the development team. It says, thank you for your continued enjoyment of playing TEPPEN. We are committed to encouraging a wide variety of useful decks and strategies that players can create by combining hero arts and cards. We have gone through with some planned balances adjustments for this purpose. As such, our hope is to keep the meta in constant flux, with even the most popular decks ever changing to a large number of decks that can counter them. However, a review of the game data since transitioning from 2019, remember that's a key important note for when we're talking about this, as well as the high frequency of hero art use and win rate of decks including them, has revealed excessive polarities and a high tendency for certain cards to be used. It's a really wordy way of saying good things are popular. In order to achieve a better balance of strategies, a balance adjustment will be made to certain cards as part of an update in February. We don't know when specifically. It will probably be early February, because that's when we got the last balance patch, it was early November. It actually came out with the Devil's Awaken. So let's look and see what's being adjusted. The list is not very long. Cards affected by the rebalancing will reap the same number of souls required for their crafting between 2.1 and eventual 2.2. That's Ada Wong from Day of Nightmares, Sting Chameleon, which is a card that does not see a lot of play, and Beltway, which you guys know probably pretty well. So let's talk about what's being adjusted. Specifically for Stealth, this is the card that you get whenever you play Ada Wong. She explores for a stealth card. What it does now is 2 MP to make a friendly unit unblockable. This is a big resonate, purple staple. It enables your Ibuki to chip away for so much damage. Allows for jury setups. There's a lot that stealth can do. Now it will only cost 1 MP, but it only makes a friendly unit unblockable for 1 attack. The reason for their change is as follows. Units that this card has targeted are often hard to take down, which leads to one-sided games, especially when combined with decks that utilize Halt. We have changed it from being a permanent effect to temporarily give the opposing player more opportunities to handle it. Overall, it's a big hit to Big Resonate. If you guys watched me on my Dante deck guide that I did late last year, and if you've played competitive TEPPEN at all, if you watch the World Finals, you know that Big Resonate was dominant. The key word being was dominant. I'm not saying it's still not really good, but something that you have to consider is that the meta has changed significantly since the Force Seekers dropped, and Big Resonate does not see as much play. Fours is more popular, like the variant with some new ascended purple units and growth, like with Oro, kind of the Force 3.5 sort of thing. It's much more popular than this. This is a big hit to Resonate. In my mind, purple decks will now stop playing Ada Wong, because unless you have a huge resonated like Hashenko or a Crimson Viper, you would rather put Hookshot on a unit and give it flying, because that is a almost more guaranteed way of being able to do your damage. Now, it's not guaranteed, because there are plenty of flying units out there. Units with anti-air, Hoytzel comes to mind for green. you know, it's just flying will be a little more reliable than this, especially since it's a one-off kind of thing. I think Ada Wong is for sure going to fall off because of this change. Let's take a look at Beltway. This is a big one. This is a huge nerf. This is huge. So Beltway before, most of you guys probably know what this did, but you know, it's one of the Resident Evil units that we got out of Day of Nightmares, which was last year. So he was originally a 4-cost 2/5, and when played, if a friendly purple unit other than himself with an MP cost of 4 is present, that means on the board, he returns 1 random enemy unit with an MP cost of 4 or less to the EX pocket. That's what he does now. What he will do after he is changed, he is now a 4-cost 2/3, and if a friendly unit, you know, that same conditional effect, it now targets a random enemy unit with an MP cost of 3 or less to the EX pocket. Now, the reason for that change is this card's effect was able to return many dex key cards back to the EX pocket while not being able to respond due to it being a when played effect. We've reduced the range of its effect as to make it harder to target key cards and make it easier to answer. This is huge. Beltway is a big part of why the 4's, you know, foundation works so well. It's gonna obliterate this card because what do you target with it now? Feline? Maybe, you know, it still hits some really small ascended units like Gate, Rikuo, but it doesn't hit a lot. And I'll tell you why this particular part of the balance change bothers me so much is because, you know, while the Shadow Blade 4's 3.5, whatever you want to call it, while that variant of purple is very good, the reason it's being played now is because it can deal with the most dominant deck in the meta right now, and that is Yan Li. Because a lot of those ascended units, particularly Rainy Turtloid and Rikuo, you know, Rainy Turtloid could be bounced in this situation by Beltway. That's not happening anymore. And Beltway now has a really terrible stat spread and cannot effectively trade when he's played on the board. This card, it just got hit by a semi-truck. You know, it's still playable, but this is a huge nerf. Now, we'll talk more about why the whole Yan Li thing bothers me here in just a minute, but I want to get all the way through this before I kind of give my overall thoughts. So there's one last thing. It says cards such as Demonic Power and Hero Arts, or Surge of Demonic Power, excuse me, and Hero Arts with high win percentages are being monitored at this time. There will be another balance adjustment in March of 2020. It says we will continue to take into account the effects of additional cards, decks, and their win percentages, and game experiences when moving forward with balance changes. We hope that this balance adjustment and continued balance adjustments will make the content of TEPPEN more enjoyable. We hope you continue to enjoy playing TEPPEN. So, a couple of things I want to point out before I kind of give my overall opinion. And if you follow me on Twitter, you already know what I think of this, but a lot of you guys don't. So here's the breakdown. One of the key things that I wanted you to keep in mind, and I mentioned this earlier, was that this is from a review of game data since transitioning from 2019. That means that this balance change, at least in the way I'm interpreting it, and others are too, is that this balance change is being based off of where the meta was in late November and December, which was, you know, in terms of a card game, especially one that had a new expansion and a new hero drop at the beginning of the year, this feels so far behind. It feels ancient compared to where the meta is now. And when we discussed the balance changes that came with the Devil's Awaken, we posted like an hour-long video talking about that. When that happened, a lot of us commented on these balance changes feel late. It feels like they submitted these balance changes and the email got sent to the spam box, and then somebody realizes, oh my God, my email never went through. Well, I gotta get this to the boss. It just feels so delayed. Like it feels like it's not current. Because the current problems, you know, the current deck that everybody's frustrated with, and the only deck that I really feel like merits some kind of nerf, and that's specifically to the hero art, and that is Yan Li. It's not even touched here. In fact, The Beltway nerf indirectly buffs that deck because now you are less likely to be able to bounce some of their Ascended units. Like Rainy Turtloid is not being bounced by Beltway anymore. And Beltway was one of the best counters to Yanli. I'm not saying it's the only one because Dark Destruction Wesker certainly does well. Raging Demon Akuma can do well. Even the Ashura Senku purple black flying, get in your face really fast can do well. But this is an indirect buff to what Yanli does. And the deck that everybody, I say everybody, that most people have problems with is Yanli. It's not even addressed here. There's nothing. And that's crazy to me. It feels so tone deaf for this kind of balance change to be announced, and it just feels like it's 2 months behind. You know, the meta continues to develop and shape, and in my opinion, they've got to be more on top of this stuff. Like, they make this mention of Surge of Demonic Power. Well, Surge was big when Big Resonate was the purple deck to play, but things have been adjusted because Fours is better to counter Yanli than Big Resonate, so that's why more people are playing it. This just feels so outdated, and we said that with the last balance patch. Another crazy thing is, you know, if they say they're paying attention to what hero arts are doing well, our man X, our boy Mega Man, has seen no balance changes since this game came out in July. And the general consensus is that X has the worst batch of hero arts of any hero in the game. He is difficult to make work because if you're gonna, you know, you're gonna play X because you like X. You're not gonna play X because he is the best choice. And it's like I mentioned in that X deck guide that I did, this deck will do way better if you just play Yawn because it's more MP efficient and you're just gonna have a better time. You got better matchups. Nothing in here. Nothing. You know, some of the other heroes that are not played as often, you know, Nero's kind of fallen off. Nothing in here for Nero. And I'm the kind of guy who believes that things should be buffed up for the most part and raised to the level of everything else. You know, raise the roof, don't drop it, if that kind of makes sense. But, you know, this just feels, it feels really disconnected from where the game is now and the kind of things that players are dealing with and the way the meta has been shaped. It feels like this doesn't really address the concerns of the meta at all. And for the most part, I'm okay with the meta. If you ask me if there's anything that I felt like really needed to be nerfed, there's a few cards that I think are overtuned, not overpowered, just by, you know, the basis of what this card does and how much it costs and what you get out of it. I think there are certain cards that are overtuned in that respect. Iris is one of them. I've always thought Iris was a bit overtuned. Hoitzel is another one. The only hero art that I really think needs nerfing is Yawn, and I don't even think it's in the value or the cost. I think the wording just needs to be changed because Yawn applies to everything. You bounce a unit, you get it back. It's just the leaving the field sort of situation, in my mind, needs to be changed to death. But we could talk about that all day. You know, the big thing looking at this, it just feels like nobody's really paying all that much attention to what's going on in the meta, or it's just taking entirely too long. And I'm not saying that I want balance changes every week or every 2 weeks, or, you know, maybe even every month would be too fast. I'll even go far as to say that. My belief, I think if we got if we got 1 month, we got a set in a hero, and then the next month we got balance changes, and then the next month another set in another hero. You know, rotating every month, I think that would be a really good, you know, schedule to go by. And they've kind of adhered to that. But to announce these balance changes and then like, oh, we're going to have more in March, it's not even, you know, it's almost February, but that's so far away. And who knows when we're going to get it. And what's going to happen now is, you know, when March comes, we'll more than likely have another set. Because we got Force Seekers in January, the Devil's Awaken, you know, at the beginning of November. You know, December was a weird month because Worlds was going on. You know, the development team was busy. I 100% get that. And then, you know, the previous schedule, it's almost every 2 months, almost. So by the time March rolls around, we're going to have a whole nother set of cards to deal with, which will change the meta in a ton of different ways. I just wish that there was more here. I wish there were more buffs. And I wish it was just more relevant to what's happening in the meta right now, because as a player who plays TEPPEN very often, who hits champion every season, I'm not saying I'm a top 100 player because I'm not. This just feels really far behind. And I'm hoping that, you know, the development team in Japan, you know, can get some good feedback on this and can kind of retool and add some more to this, because they said they're going to be keeping an eye on things. But you can't use data from the end of 2019 for a game that has changed already so much, because we have a new hero, we have a new pack, and we have new mechanics that just change the way everything functions. It feels like too little and too late, and it feels like the wrong things are being adjusted. So I've ranted about this enough. If you want to go read this article for yourself, I'm going to include a link in the description so you can go check that out. You know, I apologize for blasting you with 2 videos today, but I feel like this was really important to talk about, and I wanted to take time on my lunch break today to get my thoughts out to you guys. So that's the balance patch. That's what's coming sometime in February. We don't have an exact date. So let me know what you think. Post in the comments. I'm sure some of you guys are going to be really fired up about this, but I've also talked to some people who are okay with the way this kind of has shaken out. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way, but let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments. I would love to read them because I've been reading tweets all day, and you know, I love TEPPEN. I love reading about TEPPEN. So let me know. I've got more deck guides in the works because you guys voted on my poll. And if you haven't voted on my poll, you should go do that. Let me know what decks you want to see me cover next. Take care. I will see you later.